That's why Benefit Britain is so important. Because if you look at the benefit system per capita, it is obvious where a lot of the money is going, and it is incredibly obvious that the people taking the money have either put none in or very little in. Is that fair? Hello, it's Paul Cox here, and today I want to talk to you about Benefits Britain. This is part of my This Is series, where I talk about the key subjects most often brought up in the political debate, the political arena, and of course the culture war. Benefits Britain is what funds a lot of our cultural issues. Now, before I get into this, I want to say a couple of things. First of all, I am not against benefits. I am not against the welfare state, and I do not believe that everybody claiming benefits is a scrounger. That simply is not my politics, and that is not the way I look at life. Are there issues with the system? Yes, and we're going to get into that. Are there issues with certain demographics within the system? Yes, and we're going to get into that also. But are they all bad? No, of course they're not. Now, I personally have never claimed any benefits, and I consider myself fortunate to say that because I'm fortunate enough to have stayed in employment essentially since I left school. So therefore, I've not needed it. However, that's not true for everybody. And my family, as I grew up, were benefits claimants, which meant that my belly got filled on more than one occasion, funded by the government, for which I am incredibly grateful, and I'm sure my parents are too. However, this week we reached a watershed moment where the welfare bill exceeded what came into the coffers via income tax. The welfare bill now stands at £333 billion per year, year on year, whereas income tax at the same time is sat still at £331 billion. So there is a shortfall, a deficit of £2 billion year on year. And the problem we have is the population is growing, and the reason it's growing is that population is largely and statistically based on the type of demographic that will claim benefits. We're going to get into that. This watershed moment coincided with a policy moment introduced by this Labour government under Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer's Labour government has just lifted the cap on child benefit of 2 children, which means there is an infinite number of children which can now claim child benefits. The 2-child cap was introduced by the Conservative Party, and there is good reason for it. It might seem harsh, but I think by the time you get to the end of this video, you will not believe that to be true, and you will understand exactly why it's in place, and you will understand why probably any government with any intelligence after this Labour government will reintroduce it. There is a lot of data involved in benefits, and I'm aware that not everybody is sexually aroused by data in the same way that I am. So I am going to try and keep the data section down to a minimum and keep it relatively interesting. But it's important to have the data because it's that data and that statistics which tells the full picture, and it's the full picture which is often missing. The headlines very rarely include the context, and that's why people can get away with some of the most damaging political policy of generations. So this doesn't all play into the right's hand when you look at it at first glance. It's important to identify what the welfare bill comprises of. It's not all child benefits or universal tax credits, and it's not all going to non-working people. Many working people are still claiming benefits. That's an issue in itself. The welfare bill includes the state pension, unemployment, housing support, disability benefit, which includes the PIP, and tax credits. The state pension costs about £120 billion per year, and 13 million people are claiming that. Working age benefits, which include universal tax credits, are £90 billion per year, and there are 10 million people claiming them. Those are people aged 16 to 64. Pre-16, you're on child benefit. Post-64, roughly, sorry waspy women, are pensions. And disability benefit is £60 billion a year, with 4 million people claiming it. Interestingly, disability benefits is the fastest growing benefit in the UK. And that's because there are some woolly edges around the definition of who can claim. Largely, it's broken down into 3 categories: physical, mental, and neurological. Physical includes things like arthritis and back pain. Mental includes things like depression, anxiety, PTSD, and voting for the Green Party. Neurological includes things like epilepsy and autism. If you've got children, you'll know that a large or a significant number of people now tend to be diagnosed with autism or ADHD, things of that nature. And I'm not poo-pooing that, okay? But it is an issue, and what it is an issue waiting to be paid for. Why it's gone exponential throughout the last 10 to 20 years, I'll allow you to discuss in the comments. I'm not going to discuss it here. We are all friends and family of people that have children with autism and ADHD, and therefore we know that some of those, it's a very serious issue and they need all the support that they can get. However, when it comes to mental illness like depression and anxiety and some PTSD, we can't help those that are voting for Green. But when it comes to anxiety and depression, that's a lot more subjective. Again, I don't want to poo-poo these illnesses. I'm someone who's suffered from depression and anxiety over the years. I'm sure you are, or you know someone who's had. But I've never actually taken time off work as a result. Thank God. However, if you consistently went to your doctors and told them you had anxiety or you were depressed, you were put onto antidepressants, and you just kept going back and saying, I cannot work, there is a very high probability that you will be put on to disability benefits, and you are very unlikely to come off of them when you go on. And we have all seen stories of people that have ended up on these benefits, particularly disability benefits, and have stayed there for a very long time and are never getting back into work, because even if they do have anxiety and depression, it's only getting worse as a result of having that lack of social interaction and integration and never really pulling themselves out of the mire that they found themselves in. Very, very difficult situation to manage. And anyone who comes in has a tough job on their hands to manage it, because other than just whipping it all away and saying absolutely not, pull your socks up and get on with it, it's going to be very difficult to solve. And I'm not sure that option A is the best option. Again, let me know in the comments, what would you do to overcome the anxiety and depression issue? I think just quickly, I'd like to run through where the spending goes. I've already mentioned that state pension is £120 billion plus per year. That's largely people over an average age of 64, 65. Obviously, that's changed in recent times. And those are largely people that have contributed to the coffers for many, many years. Now, say what you like about the state pension, and I'm sure you will, particularly when it comes to the triple lock. However, I'm grateful that it's there, and I'm sure all of you at some point will be grateful that it's there in the future. Also, particularly if you've worked incredibly hard and just want to see out the final years of your life without having to worry about money, because that's all you did all of your life. And you've put a lot of money into that system, and you've seen it go to a lot of places that you have not benefited from, which is largely what this video is about and why it features so much in the political discourse. I'll get onto the demographics, by the way, in a moment, because that is incredibly important and actually props up this whole debate. Working age benefits like universal credits and job seekers allowance makes up about 6 to 7 million people at a cost of about £90 billion per year. Housing benefits is about 5 million people at a cost of about £25 billion per year. Disability and health benefits are about £60 billion a year, and as I say, about 4 million people. But this is the one I really want to concentrate on: child-related benefits. Around 7 million families across the UK receive child benefit, and this costs about £15 billion a year. In order to talk about this thoroughly and to make my point without coming across as incredibly biased, because statistics don't care about biases if they're correctly gathered. Let's look at the statistics for ethnic breakdown of benefit claimants across the UK. For instance, universal credit. And this is the latest 2026 data I've dug out, by the way. White British people claim 77% of all universal credit. Asian British, 10%. Black, African Caribbean, Black British, 6%. Other ethnic groups, 4.5%. And mixed multiple ethnic groups, 3%. Here's the very important context. Very important. This reflects population size. The UK population is roughly 80 to 82% white. So the largest share of claimants being white is to be expected. Minority groups are smaller populations, so raw percentages do not tell the full story. And this is where per capita comes in. If you don't know what per capita is, let me explain it in one short sentence. The average amount for each person in a group. So the mathematical equation for per capita is total amount divided by the number of people. And per capita is the kryptonite of the progressive left and socialism. Because what per capita does is exposes the problem for all its warts and all. So the likelihood of receiving benefits by ethnicity shows how likely benefit groups are to receive support, not just the numbers. At the highest, white British families get about 54% of state support, and the lowest are Chinese families at 25%. However, Bangladeshi and Pakistani families receive the most tax credits and child-related benefits, which is very important, and I'll get to that in a moment, I promise. Black and Bangladeshi families are most likely to receive income-related benefits at around 24%. Income-related benefits, e.g. housing and support, groups most likely to receive are Black households, Bangladeshi households and Pakistani. Groups less likely to claim are Indian and Chinese. Now, child benefits, as I've already said, this really is the marker. Highest rates are among Bangladeshis at 34% and Pakistanis at 30% of the population. Lowest rates are white British at 17% and Chinese at 12%. So let's go back to the per capita discussion, shall we? 82% of the population are white, yet only 17% of them are claiming child benefits. Let me tell you something incredibly insightful. The UK population is 0.9% Bangladeshi, and they are claiming 34% of all child benefits. The largest religion in Bangladesh is Islam. Now, the reason that is important and relevant is that that is a religion that likes to grow exponentially, whereas the white British people, Christian and otherwise, do not at all. So, we have a decreasing white British population claiming less and an increasing Muslim Bangladeshi population in claiming much, much more. At the moment, at least twice as many, and they are less than 1% of the overall population on the British Isles. Pakistanis are only 2.7% of the overall population in Britain, and they are claiming 30% of all child benefits for the same reasons as the Bangladeshis. So, this has come at the same time that the 2-child cap benefit has been removed, which means that if you are a Bangladeshi family and you are 0.9% of the population, you just got yourself a minimum of £6,000 per year pay rise as a result of Keir Starmer's Labour taking away the 2-child cap benefit. And that's not going to stop. Year on year, more kids on more kids, exponentially, infinitely growing, more and more and more. And guess what? You are much less likely to be in work and therefore in a state of poverty if you are one of those groups also. These are the statistics. This is not just me saying this to make a point in my video. Now, interestingly, and perhaps not too surprisingly, white British households are much more likely to receive pension, but that is only 27%. One of the reasons that's interesting is if you think about the age group now, late 60s, 70s plus, these people were born in the 40s, 50s. Okay? Now, as we all know, the white British population during those times was much higher than it is now, 95 to 100%. So it's very interesting to see only 27% of those are claiming state pension, which means that a large proportion claiming state pension aren't white British and therefore probably weren't in this country during that period and therefore were not contributing as long as those white British people, but are still taking from the welfare pot. Now, all of this might just seem a little bit racist to some people because I am mentioning race. Unfortunately, facts don't take into account race. They just tell us the sheer numbers. The reason race is mentioned is because it's relevant. The welfare pot is generated by the working British people. And if it's pensions, and if it's child benefit, and if it's universal credit, that pot has been built up over decades. Now, we now know that Pakistanis, Bangladeshis are receiving incredible amounts of money for their children, and also a number of other non-British white people are taking a state pension. It's unsustainable because those people would not have contributed for the length of time that the white British population did. So we do have an issue that's worthy of discussion. Should you be able to take everything out if you didn't put everything in? It's an interesting point. I don't think that it shouldn't be discussed because somebody's of a different religion, somebody has a different cultural background, somebody was born in a country that wasn't Great Britain, or, as is often the case, somebody is not white. The right have not made skin colour a thing. The left have made skin colour a thing because the left like to label people. The left like to say this is good and this is bad. It just so happens that the left have made all white people, particularly white men, the oppressor. And that's really important to them because they have to split the world into the oppressor and the oppressed. Everybody in the oppressed section, good. Everybody in the oppressor section, bad. Now, on the face of it, okay, why not? That seems fairly logical, but they don't stick to logic because they'll say someone like me or someone like you is part of that oppression too, when quite clearly we have nothing to do with the oppression. So what they do then is they talk about systematic racism. It's inherent, it's passed down throughout the generations and it's in the system, and it means that even though we're not aware, so unconscious bias, we are doing it anyway. The reason they do that is because they know they cannot point the finger of blame at us. They know that we were not directly involved. So they make up a mythical ancestor that is related to us all and make us the enemy that way. Well, we're here to reverse engineer all of this because it's not true. And if you're worried, like I am, about the success of our country and how we build its future, then we do have to look at how we spend our money. So therefore, we have to identify where the problems are. And I've just listed them all out, and it's why Benefits Britain becomes such a big deal. It's not just because there are a number of white families that have never done anything other than claim benefits generation after generation after generation. There are work-shy white families. There are families that are of colour that are taking advantage of the system because we are so soft in this country. And Labour Party and the Green Party and the Lib Dems to some degree know that's where they can harvest many votes. So they lean into the narrative that if it's to be discussed, it's bad, bigoted or racist. So what they allow is the issues to proliferate in order for their own benefit. But think about that for a minute. The Zach Polanskis, the Keir Starmers, the Ed Davies, all playing the political game to serve themselves. Meanwhile, the people that have built this country, the white incumbent people, now that's not a bad thing to say, that again is true, are left behind because they know they've only got a certain amount of money to go around. So they push it in one direction. And the reason they can do that is because they make this mythical enemy. They talk about gammon, they talk about right-wingers, they talk about racists and bigots, they talk about people who don't understand, they talk about multiculturalism and DEI. It's all a political game. And the benefit system funds it. That's why Benefit Britain is so important. Because if you look at the benefit system per capita, it is obvious where a lot of the money is going, and it is incredibly obvious that the people taking the money have either put none in or very little in. Is that fair? If you fill your biscuit jar up at home and your neighbour comes in and takes all the biscuits, what do you call that? Theft. Theft is what you call that. However, if you fill the metaphorical welfare biscuit jar up and anybody takes from it, what do we call that? Kind. It's kind. It's the right thing to do. And if you've noticed in some way that it's not, then you are wrong. Well, you're not wrong. You're clearly not wrong. And I'm not saying there is a knee-jerk reaction in the other way here. In fact, what I am saying is if we have, like we do with every subject covered in the This Is series that I'm generating, if we have an open, transparent and fair discussion about all of those topics, you'll find eventually we'll come to a place that benefits all, but largely benefits those that deserve it the most. That is equality. Look, I'll say it again because I think it's worthy at the end of this video. Not everybody on benefits is a shirker. Not everybody on benefits is taking the mickey. If you are on a benefits now and you're watching this and you are struggling, I wish you well. I hope your benefits are helping you. I hope you have a support structure around you. But you too must be looking at it thinking, well, it's hard for me to get this. It's hard for me to get the other. I'm not getting this service, but I can see other people are. The chances are, if you're in that position, you have contributed to that welfare coffer, to that welfare pot. So let's have open, honest discussions and let's take the left down, because the left, the progressive ultra-liberals, are ruining this country from the bottom up as well as the top down. If you like this video, please subscribe, like, share, press the bell, then you'll be told about every time I release a new video. I am at Paul Cox Comedy on all social media platforms, and until next time, keep it real.